Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we're here at the South Park Center. I'm here with Jane Wells with her documentary, Go Debbie. Let's take a look at a clip.
I like to tell all my male friends that I'm their worst nightmare. I'm a woman who knows exactly how they think. I've been a miner. When I lost my job, I was a asphalt plant manager. I've known as long as I can remember, that I should have been a woman. I decided on my 60th birthday, hell with it, I can't get a job as a man.
Jane, thank you so much for coming here and coming all the way from New York to be here with us today. Tell us a brief synopsis of Go Debbie.
It's great to be here, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Welcome.
It's nice to be with a fellow Brit.
I know, we get around, don't we?
Yes, we do. Well, I am a citizen. So Go Debbie is the story, a very brief story about a Vietnam veteran who has transitioned to be a woman, Debbie, and she tells quite a lot in a short space of time about how it is to be a man who transitions to being a woman.
I'm so glad, Jane, that you made this story. I think Debbie was a real inspirational person, and I think resonates with so many people, particularly today. And so it was so great to hear her story and just what she's going through and been through as a member of the military as well, and transitioned to be a woman. When did this inspiration come for you, deciding to create this particular documentary?
Okay, so I was actually shooting B-roll for a feature documentary, and we had the camera set up and we were ready to film the character who was speaking at an event. And suddenly this woman came on the stage and said, "Hello, my name is Debbie. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and thanks to Obama, I got a new vagina. I got a vagina for my 68th birthday." And
Brilliant.
I was just like, wow. Was the camera rolling? No, it wasn't. So I immediately thought, I have to find this woman, I have to talk to her, and I have to hear her story. And we were a small team, so we were able to find her and film her the next day. And she invited us into her home and told us the story. And it was actually a moving story, because, not least of all, because as she transitioned, she lost her job, she became homeless, and she has really been able to sort of get herself back from homelessness, to have shelter, and she's a very, very active advocate for transgender people, for the homeless, and she really walks the walk, I guess.
Oh my goodness, I mean, I just watched it, I was so inspired watching it, and hearing her journey and her struggles and overcoming her struggles as well.
Yeah.
I mean, for you as a filmmaker, I mean, what's so wonderful is, your organization, 3 Generations, which I love to talk about, because you all doing this all the time and helping people with, social injustice. Can you tell me more about 3 Generations?
Yeah, so we set it up just 10 years ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
After I'd produced my first feature documentary, and I just thought, wow, there are so many stories to tell. Wouldn't it be great if we could just do videos and shorter stories? And that was the impetus to do it. And then after a few years, people on the board said, oh, you should make a feature doc. So we go back and forth between videos, social media stuff now, feature documentaries, and shorts like this. And it's a pretty small organization. It's small, we're lean, and what that enables us to do is to be literally to happen upon someone like Debbie and say, okay, let's just go do this.
I love
so
that.
we have the flexibility, and we can pivot to a story when we find it. And hers is probably one of the most powerful ones that came in unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And it's just wonderful to be able to do that.
I love, as you said, you had the impetus to do it, because 10 years ago, we weren't really as familiar in watching all these short narrative documentaries, these incredible films. And yet you actually have been doing that. You discovered that before we even were doing it. And now everyone, we're constantly seeking shorter content and
So
short
true,
stories. And
yeah.
I'm like, wow, so you started it. So Netflix owe you a lot of money.
Yeah.
But no, it's really fantastic. And again, I think there's something very special when you can just discover a story, start rolling and showcase it, Now, obviously, Debbie in particular, I mean, there's never been a better time to really showcase a story like hers. because obviously she's from a different generation, so it must have been a lot harder, you know, back then, even than it is now, and even though we're still going through things today. Was it, did you find, because we, you know, with your, as we say, your subject, how was it for her to kind of like tell this story? Was it easy for her? What kind of communication did you have before?
Well, she has a terrific sense of humor, and and she's served in the military. She worked, you know, in an asphalt plant, building roads and so on, and she has children. But we connected pretty well. Her ex-wife happens to be British too, so we had that in common. And she's used to being around British women. But I think she has a lot of courage, and it does take a lot of courage to tell the story, and she does it with humor, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Because in a serious documentary, if you can, you know, have people laugh as well, that always helps.
Yeah.
And she does have a terrific sense of humor, but I think it takes courage to tell a story like hers, and I felt like I learnt so much more about transgender people and the journey of the transition from her. And I just feel like she really enhanced my life knowing her. I'm happy we were able to do it. Actually.
And I mean, as an experienced documentary filmmaker, is it quite a wondrous feeling when you're, you know, you obviously, you have an idea of what it could look like, you know, as you begin, but then as you go through and unfold stories, is it quite an experience when, as you say, you find out more about this person and you find out the struggles, and not just about her, but, you know, as a whole, there's thousands upon people that are going through this. I mean, obviously one of the highlighted stories we had, you know, these past year is the fact that, you know, several transgender people are being exempt from being part of the military. Is it quite a discovery as a documentary film to really kind of unravel like the many stories and things that people have experienced as well?
Yeah, I mean, the veteran stories is one of the tranches or the tracks that we've been working on for several years, and we get funding from the general public mostly for veteran stories. So, you know, I've thought a lot of, we've had stories of veterans who have PTSD. I've wanted to do stuff about homeless women in the military, and there are a lot of different social justice stories to be told about the military now. But this was not one I had anticipated doing, but when I heard her, I was just like, well, that's, you know, we got to do this. And we did. And what's been quite interesting is that we've had some people, we announced that the film had been made to some of the donor people, and some of them were not happy that we had chosen to tell the story of a transgender veteran, and that makes me even more resolute to get the story out there.
I love it. You know, I love that you said that.
Because those are the stories that we, as documentarians, that we have to tell, are the ones that do somehow upset and offend people. Because we have an idea of, you know, the military, you have an idea of veterans of, you know, who the perfect vet story is, and this is one that somehow pushes the envelope a bit. So
that's lovely. And the moment you just said that, I was like, oh, that makes me want me to get out there even more. You know, and I think, you know, we're trying to teach and educate and help people understand and grow closer, you know, to each other and see each other as humans as well. And you know, anyone that's fought for their country is an incredible person that's put their life on the line for our safety, and I think that's just something we should commend, no matter who you are, what you are. And I think I highly commend that you put this story out there, because this documentary is going to resonate with so many people. And, you know, I mean, honestly, I really believe it will not only educate but save lives as well. You know, I think that someone else there is hearing their voice, and I think that's a great credit to you as a filmmaker.
Thank you.
What was the biggest challenge that you had in making it?
Well, we had no time to plan, no time to do research.
The usual.
The usual. Because I heard her speak, filmed her the next day, and then we had to fly back to New York the day after that. So I got up really early. I was like, we have to get some B-roll outside. So I rushed to her place, took her out. We went to meet some of her homeless friends. And then I had to drive straight to the airport. So I didn't really know what we had. And the editing was interesting because it was really just a question of seeing how long the film could be based on whether we had enough B-roll to put it together. Obviously now I wish I had planned it and we could have gone and done more.
You did it, it was
but
great.
We did it. But so the hardest thing was really just accepting that it was what it was. It was sort of on the fly, and it's more like a news story in a way.
Yeah.
But,
What's next for you?
I've just been finishing up a documentary that I was shooting when I met Debbie called Potluck. The Altered State of Colorado, and it's a documentary that looks at legalization of cannabis. 5 years on in Colorado was the first state to legalize, and it really has a look at whether it has helped the end the war on drugs and whether it's been a good thing for Colorado or not, and what the issues and challenges are, particularly looking at it in terms of the impact on people of color.
Yeah. I could just sit and talk to Jane all day. You're just so interesting, Jane. It's like, I love it. It's so wonderful. I think, you know, anyone out there that wants to become a filmmaker, particularly in the documentary genre, what piece of advice do you have or you may have learned, you know, in your experiences for anyone that wants to go out there and do it? What do you need?
Well, one thing I say to people, and this is not what you're going to expect, is get good audio. Because especially in documentary, you can't go back. So if the audio is no good, you really are screwed. So I think brilliant audio is the first piece of advice I give, because people always think about the camera and can they, you know, but people forget about audio.
That's so valuable, yeah.
And that's really, I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, obviously funding is always a problem, and finding the right audiences. But I think just going with your gut and connecting with the people whose stories you're telling. I really feel like it's a trust thing for me.
Yeah.
And I try to make the people I've filmed trust me, and to hear what they have to say and what they're comfortable with and not comfortable with, and to kind of honor their story. And I do follow up with the people whose stories we tell always afterwards. You know, we try 3 generations. We try to support them if they need support afterwards in some way. I think that's really important, because we live in a culture now where people want stories really quickly, but then who cares about the person who's bared their soul in a way? And I do take some pride in the fact that we have ongoing relationships with the people we filmed, and that's very satisfying for us, I think.
That's really wonderful, and I think actually also a very important piece of advice, to really care about, you know, the person that they're working with as well. Jane, I love your work, I really do, and thank you for making and creating and bringing awareness to stories that we need to be talking about as well. And everybody should see Go Debbie, because it's one of those documentaries you'll watch and you'll be a different person once you've watched it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jane was everyone.
Thank you.